Hello, soccer fans. This is Eric, and this is the first ever episode of The Overhead Kick. Now, in this show, we will be talking about MLS, US Soccer, NASL, and some NWSL news and game recaps. I am a huge soccer fan I'm a huge fan of Orlando City and the Tampa Bay Rowdies and US Soccer. I live in Florida. I've played about 7 years of soccer, and that's enough about me. So, let's talk about U.S. soccer first. If you have watched, the game started at 3:30. USA played a World Cup qualifier against St. Vincent and the Grenadines. USA won that game 6-0 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It was a great match. USA was strong. Second half, they kind of went off a limp, but they came back, fought hard. I thought it was a really good game. St. Vincent had 2 disallowed goals, both nearly just by a yard. So that's kind of bad for them, but good win for USA. We got 3 points, hoping to get to Russia. So let's go over the scoring recap for this game. The first goal of the match came from Bobby Wood in the 27th minute. He had a nice strike, went to the right side of the goalkeeper. Nothing much the goalkeeper could have done about that one, though. The second goal came from Matt Beasler in the 31st minute, off a misplaced header from a St. Vincent defender, right to his feet. He kicked it in. The third goal came in the 43rd minute, right before the half. Bobby Wood earned USA a penalty kick, out the door, nailed it in the net. The fourth goal came from Christian Pulisic, his first World Cup qualifier goal, in the 70th minute. The fifth one came from Sasha Kljestan from the New York Red Bulls in the 78th minute off a nice pass. He was wide open in front of the net, tapped it in. And the last goal came in the 92nd minute. Christian Pulisic, wide open at the top of the box, kicked this one to the left side of the goal. Goalkeeper just stood there, had nothing to do. And that was the final. It was a great game for USA, like I mentioned before. Got our 3 points. On to Trinidad, next game. Now, enough with the men's soccer team. As you know, the women's soccer team in Rio lost to Sweden in the quarterfinals on penalty kicks. And the main controversial story was Hope Solo's suspension. She was suspended 6 months and the contract was terminated for a comment she made afterwards about calling them cowards and stuff like that. And that really isn't a great thing to do. You know, you're an inspiration to millions of young girls in the U.S. who look up to you. See something like that, you know. I know she was upset, but I kind of have to side with USA on this one with the termination of her contract. So that should be the end of her career, but she is still playing with the Seattle Reign in the NWSL. Now on to MLS. Well, the only game that's happened so far was Thursday night. It was New York City FC versus DC United in New York. And New York came out with a win 3-2 over DC United yesterday. First goal of the match came from Sam from DC United in the 36th minute. The next goal came from David Villa from New York City in the 79th minute. That was a nice goal. And then in the 85th minute, Frank Lampard put New York City FC up 2-1, and I thought that was game. But then Neagle from DC United tied it up in the 91st minute, 2-2. And then, in the 93rd minute, Frank Lampard again scores, putting them up 3-2, and that was the final. And Lampard had a great game, so did Pirlo, as many of you saw his little juggling move he pulled in that game. So that was a good win for New York City. Good win over DC United. Frank Lampard proven he could still play in the MLS. Little old. Tomorrow in the MLS, we have some good matchups. We got New York Red Bulls versus Vancouver Whitecaps, Colorado versus New England, Philadelphia versus Chicago, Portland versus FC Dallas, the Crew versus the Galaxy. And then on Wednesday, we have Orlando City versus Montreal Impact. Hope Orlando gets those 3 points then. Galaxy versus RSL, Dynamo versus Sporting KC. On Friday, that match is. And yeah. So the MLS is kind of a tight race right now. Let me check these standings. In the Eastern Conference, New York City is up by 1 point over Toronto. So New York City has 44, Toronto has 43. And then the Red Bulls have 40, and so does Philadelphia. But the Red Bulls have more goals for. So, they have less goals against. So they are in front of Philadelphia. Then it goes Montreal, DC, and that is the end of the playoff line. And under it is Orlando City, 1 point out of a playoff spot. On the Western Conference, it's really FC Dallas pulling away with it. They have 48 points. Second is RSL at 43. And then Colorado at 43. And then the Galaxy at 40. And then it goes Sporting KC, Portland Timbers, and that's the playoff line. And under it is San Jose with 32 points, Seattle at 31, Vancouver at 31, and Houston Dynamo in last place with 25. And on more news in the MLS, Miguel De Jong from LA Galaxy is sent off and he has left the Galaxy. Yeah, he had agreed to terminate his contract. One thing I do have to say about the MLS is, in other countries, it isn't appreciated as much. They call it a league that the greats go to when they're older, and it's not known as like a world-class league. Because, sure, there are better leagues. Like, for example, let's say La Liga, you got the Bundesliga, and you got, can't think of the name, the English Premier League. But with the MLS, I think a lot of their younger players are there. And there's also, I've noticed MLS games are more high scoring. Because if you watch an MLS game, sometimes it's 3-2, 4-2, 4-1. They're always, a lot of times they're very high scoring. You watch English Premier League, it's always like 1-0, 0-0, or like 2-1 rarely. It's because there's more evenly matched teams there. But I prefer the MLS because I like to see a lot of scoring. And it's also, in my country, so I can relate to that more. Now, let me just do a slight touch on the Euros 2016. As all of you know, Portugal won the Euros with a win in the final. Ronaldo, as you know, got hurt during that match, but his team still pulled off a 1-0 victory. So that was a great win for Portugal in the Euros. Great win for them. What else? The Copa America. As you know, USA got 4th place, which, as a USA fan, I'm happy with that. We're not a big soccer country, and I think 4th place is a really good. We're on the right path. Chile won that match over Argentina, and as you know, Messi retired, but came back and scored in the first half yesterday in that World Cup qualifier. I'm sorry if this first show is a little shaky. This is my first ever podcast. So, yeah, it will be better over time. So don't think it's going to be like this every episode. Well, in other World Cup qualifiers, Honduras and Canada are tied 1-1 at the half. And there will be Trinidad and Guatemala play later. So do Haiti and Croatia, and Panama and Jamaica, and El Salvador and Mexico. Those are all games later today. Yesterday we had a handful of games. Won't go over them all. Go over some of the main ones. Let's see. Colombia beat Venezuela 2-0. Brazil beat Ecuador 3-0. Argentina beat Uruguay 1-0 with Messi's goal. Paraguay beat Chile, which I think is an upset, 2-1. And Australia beat Iraq 2-0. So those are some of the other World Cup qualifier goals. We are very early in the stage. Let's see. On Sunday, we have some good games. You got Denmark and Armenia, England and Slovakia, and you got Germany and Norway, which should be a great match. Germany, the reigning World Cup champs. And on Monday, there are some good games. You have Spain is playing, Wales is playing. Serbia plays Ireland, and Ukraine plays Iceland. And as you know, Iceland was an underdog in the Euros and did pretty good, I think. On Tuesday, let's see, what are some noticeable games? France and Bulgaria. You got Sweden and Netherlands. That is a pretty decent match. You have Uruguay and Paraguay. You have Venezuela and Argentina. And you have USA versus Trinidad. That should be a great match. I will be watching it. Last time they played, it was 0-0 in Trinidad. Trinidad has some good players. Kevin Molino, he's on Orlando City. I think USA should win this match, though. You got Brazil and Colombia, which will be a great match. Jamaica and Haiti. And that should be good for this week. So a lot of World Cup qualifiers going on. Next World Cup is 2018 in Russia. So looking forward to that. It's still a ways to go. We are in 2016. So now let's go on to the NASL. And if you don't know, the NASL is the North American Soccer League. My favorite team is the Tampa Bay Rowdies. I have season tickets. I'm a big fan. Let's see. And so some of the teams you might recognize in the NASL would be the New York Cosmos, Minnesota United, which is going to be in the MLS in 2017. Some other teams include, let's see, you got the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. They're the other team in Florida, along with Miami FC. Another big name club, as you might know, would be the Puerto Rico FC. They're owned by Carmelo Anthony, who bought them, and they now play in the NASL. So, in the NASL, not much so far. In this week, we had a match on Wednesday, and that was New York Cosmos beat Indy 11 3-0. And Fort Lauderdale played Minnesota, and that ended 0-0. Today we have Ottawa versus FC Edmonton. Battle Canada over there. Tomorrow we got some good matches. Indy 11 versus the Tampa Bay Rowdies. We got Puerto Rico FC versus Miami FC. Those are two expansion clubs this year, so they're going to face off. And we also have the Carolina Railhawks and the Jacksonville Armada. So, let me go over the standings. Right now, it's the New York Cosmos are winning the Fall League, 26 points they have. FC Edmonton's in second with 20, so is Indy 11 with 20. Then it goes Minnesota, Miami, Rio OKC, which is an expansion team, Fort Lauderdale, Carolina, Ottawa, the Tampa Bay Rowdies, Jacksonville, and then Puerto Rico. If you don't know how the NASL works, there are two seasons. There's the fall season and the spring season. And they will combine the points from each of the seasons. And the top four will play in the playoffs. And the winner will get the NASL Cup. So it's always interesting to see it at the end. There is no relegation or promotion like there is in England. It's not like that over here. They're hoping to get it like that. I hope so too. Some players you might recognize in the NASL would be Joe Cole, who plays on the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Freddie Adu, a once USA star, plays on the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Let's see what other players you would recognize. There's not a whole lot. They tend to go to the MLS rather than the NASL. I think the Rowdies kind of got a steal with Joe Cole. So the NASL is a growing league, gaining popularity. But it seems whenever there's a team that gets a lot of fans, it always goes up to the MLS. Indy 11 should go soon. Minnesota went up. And yeah, so it's a growing league. I'm a big fan of it. I really like the NASL. I like how the playoff system works. Just needs to gain more popularity in the U.S. It's like the second. There's 3 tiers of soccer in the U.S. It goes MLS, NASL, and USL. USL is like the minorest league that you can get here in professional soccer. The USL is the United Soccer League, if you're not familiar with it. Some teams, it's mostly minor league teams like Orlando City B. Their B team plays there. Like New York Red Bulls 2. There's Louisville City, FC Cincinnati, some teams. Charleston Batteries, one of the most popular ones. You got like Toronto FC 2, FC Montreal, it's a lot of like the teams B teams and like their number 2 teams. A lot of them play here, like LA Galaxy too. So let me go over the standings real quick in the USL. In the Eastern Conference, Red Bulls have 56 points. Second is Louisville City with 50, and it kind of drops after that. So those two will probably be fighting for first. In the Western Conference, it's Sacramento Republic FC with 44 points, and then Rio Grande Valley FC with 42, Vancouver Whitecaps FC 41, and OKC Energy FC with 41 points. And it's pretty tight in that division. So the way this league works, to break all ties and stuff, it goes by total wins, goal differential, goals scored, and then ranking based on points earned against top 4 conference finishers. So if a number of games is unequal, then point percentage applies. And FIFA Fair Play is the team with the fewest disciplinary points in the league games. If a number of games is unequal, points will be divided by games played to arrive at a common basis of comparison. So in this league, some teams might not play as many as others games. That is a fact I did not know as well. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but the NWSL is the next league we're going to talk about. And the NWSL is the National Women's Soccer League. It is the highest you can get in women's soccer. So like I was saying, it's a National Women's Soccer League. It is a growing league. It doesn't pull the crowds as other leagues do. But I like the league. It's where, if you ever watch a U.S. women's national team, almost all of those players on the U.S. women's national team play in the NWSL. So you see a lot of them there. My favorite team in the NWSL is the Orlando Pride, obviously, because they are partnered with Orlando City. The standings right now are Washington Spirit in first with 35 points, and then Portland Thorns FC with 29 points. You got the Chicago Red Stars with 28, and then it goes Western New York Flash, the Seattle Reign, Sky Blue FC, Orlando Pride, Houston Dash, FC Kansas City, and then the Boston Breakers. Some names you'll recognize, as you know, Hope Soto plays for the Seattle Reign. Alex Morgan plays for Orlando Pride. Carly Lloyd plays for the Houston Dash. There are many others. I can't think of it. I don't watch the league as much as I want to, just because of time and stuff. Soccer games are long, 90 minutes. Take a lot of time to watch. So yeah, most of the U.S. women's national team plays in this league. So yeah, in recent years, the Seattle Reign have been pretty good. Portland Thorns have been pretty good. Alex Morgan was on the Portland Thorns last year, but she went to Orlando Pride this year. Mainly, I think because her husband, Carrasco, who plays for Orlando City, so I think she probably wanted to be in the same city as him. That might have had something to do with it. And I will just touch on the English Premier League right now. It's on Saturday was match day 3, and some notable matches were Chelsea won 3-0 over Burnley FC, Manchester United won 1-0 over Hull City, Manchester City won 3-1 over West Ham. Those are some of the bigger score lines there. Leicester City won 2-1 over Swansea City. Leicester City is the reigning champions. And match day 4 will start on Saturday the 10th. Some of the matches there are going to be Man United versus Man City. Should always be a great one. Arsenal and Southampton, Stoke City and Tottenham, Liverpool and Leicester City. This is not a week you want to miss. Everton and Sunderland. Oh yeah, a quick thing on Everton. As you know, the goalie, Tim Howard, from Everton, has gone to the Colorado Rapids this year in the MLS. He used to play in MLS before he went to Everton, and then he came back. So, some fans are happy about that, some aren't. I have met Tim Howard in person at the mall near us, but that's a different story. He still follows Everton if you see his Instagram. Now I'll touch on the CONCACAF Champions League. For those who don't know what it is, it's CONCACAF covers about like the Americas, like North America and South America, and yeah, those two continents basically. And the Champions League is the best teams from like every country will come into like a big tournament and play each other. And that's always fun to watch. It always ends up being in the final an MLS team and the league from one of the teams from the league in Mexico. It always ends up being like that in the final. So I'll go over some of the scores for that. Most recently, I'll do mostly MLS. FC Dallas tied 1-1 with Real Esteli. Most of these teams you're not going to know. Neither do I. These are very small clubs in the preliminary rounds. The Vancouver Whitecaps won 3-0 over Sporting KC. Some other scores from the MLS would be the Red Bulls tied 1-1 with Alianza. And in the upcoming matches for the CONCACAF Champions League, we have Sporting KC and Vancouver Whitecaps. That will be on Tuesday the 13th. And we have the Portland Timbers versus Deportivo Saprissa on Wednesday the 14th. And there are some teams there, like I was saying, from the Mexico Soccer League, which I cannot think of the name of for my life right now. Some of the main clubs from there you might recognize would be like Club America, maybe Monterrey, Tigres. So some of their matches, let's see. Pumas would be another one. Pumas won 2-0 over a club from Honduras. Monterrey lost 3-2 to Arabe Unido. I'm pretty sure that is an upset. And that's all covered for the CONCACAF Champions League. So next I'll do the UEFA Champions League. That is the more popular Champions League, if you might think. So that covers basically Europe around there. And they have their own Champions League, and that's always great to watch. Let's see some of the scores here. Let's see. In the UEFA Champions League, the Manchester City won 1-0 over Steaua Bucuresti. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but they won Agrayet 6-0. If you don't know what Agrayet is, mostly in soccer tournaments, they will play 2 matches, and a team that wins by more goals will win. So let's say a team wins the first match 1-0, but then the next match, the other team wins 2-0, they will win because they scored 2 goals, the other team only scored 1. So that's how Agrayet works, if you new to soccer, basically. So yeah, in the first leg of that, it was 5-0 Man City. In the second leg, it was 1-0 Man City. So the Agrayet was 6-0, and Man City will go on. That's really it for the big teams right now in the UEFA Champions League. The young boys played. Tuesday on the 13th, we have Bayern Munich and FC Rostov. That should be a great match. Bayern Munich has a loaded lineup. We have Atletico Madrid plays PSV Eindhoven on the 13th, and FC Barcelona plays Celtic on the 13th. That's always a great match when those two pair up. We have PSG versus Arsenal on the 13th. That is a definite not miss. Tottenham and Monaco, Real Madrid and Sporting. We have Leicester City and Club Brugge. This is a great leg of the Champions League right now. We have Juventus and Sevilla. Dortmund is playing. And that's really it for the main clubs there. So, I guess the next league that I would touch on, before I do that, let me talk a little more about the MLS. So those who aren't familiar with it, some names you might recognize in the MLS would be Didier Drogba, You got Frank Lampard, Andrea Pirlo, David Villa. You got Ricardo Kaká. You got Breck Shea from the U.S. national team. There's many stars there. Most of them tend to come over to the MLS when they're older. I'm hoping that'll change in the upcoming years and we'll get more superstars in their prime. But another example of that would be, let's see, Graham Zusi plays for Sporting KC. He's not that old. He plays on the U.S. national team as well. Most of the U.S. national team players will play in the MLS. You got Bradley Wright Phillips on New York Red Bulls. And a few others. So let's go to La Liga now. So match day 2 in La Liga, FC Barcelona won 1-0 over Atletico Bilbao. Ivan Rakitic got the only goal there. Sevilla tied 0-0 with Villarreal. Real Madrid won 2-1 over Celta Vigo. Morata and Toni Kroos got the goals for them. Let's see, what are the match day 3 coming up? There are some good matches here. You got FC Barcelona versus Alaves. Valencia and Real Betis. That should be a good match. And you got Real Madrid versus Osasuna, if I pronounce that right. And you got Real Sociedad versus Espanyol in this next match day. So, let's go back to the MLS real quick. That is my favorite league, first of all, so that's mostly what I'll be talking about through my shows. And throughout the year, it won't normally be this much of covering all these different leagues. That is just something I tried for my first episode. Maybe I'll change it up next week and focus on more of a couple leagues. Let's go to last week in MLS. Let's see. It was rivalry week. And for those who don't know what that is teams that are rivals, like that live close by, all of them played each other. Like Montreal Impact played Toronto FC. Since those are close, that would be considered a rivalry. So rivalry week was last year. And let's start off with Orlando City and New York City FC. Orlando City won 2-1 that match. The goals were both by Kaká. In the 32nd minute, he scored. And in the 63rd minute, off a penalty kick, he scored. He had a great match. And for New York City, it was Steven Mendoza who got the lone goal for them. It was a pretty close game. The shots on target were 4 apiece. It was a good game, that game. I was sweating that game till Kaká put in that penalty kick. And that was always nice. And let's see. And that rivalry started because both teams became expansion teams in 2015. And they both played each other in their first ever match. And it was in Orlando. So that rivalry kind of started. They're both in the same conference. They play each other quite often. The matches are always good when they do. And the next match, this is a good rivalry. Seattle and Portland Timbers. This was a great match. Portland Timbers won 4-2. The goals for Portland came from... So the goals in that match came from Fernando Adi in the 21st minute. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name. In the 16th minute, it looks like Andrius Keviscus. In the 29th minute, Lucas Milano scored. In the 44th minute, Taylor got a goal. For Seattle, it was Jordan Morris in the 51st minute and Ivan Schütz in the 47th minute. So that was a great game. Those teams are rivals because they're both in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle is in Washington, Portland is in Oregon. Those states border each other, so that rivalry explains itself. In rivalry week, we also had New England Revolution versus New York Red Bulls. The full time for that one was 1-0 New York off a Bradley Wright Phillips goal in the 55th minute. And that is a rivalry because they're both in the Northeast. New England and New York. Those are really close to each other. And the next match we will cover would be the LA Galaxy and Vancouver Whitecaps. That ended 0-0. FC Dallas versus Houston Dynamo. That is a rivalry because both teams are in Texas. The final score was 3-1 FC Dallas. Diaz scored a penalty kick in the 59th minute, and Barrios got 2 goals in that match. And for the Dynamo, it was just Alex in the 19th minute. So that was 3-1 Dallas, who is leading the league in points. The Montreal Impact beat Toronto FC 1-0. That is a rivalry. They're both in Canada. It came off Ignacio Piatti in the 73rd minute. That was a great match. I watched that one. Both teams played really strong in that match. The Columbus Crew beat the San Jose Earthquakes 2-0. DC United beat Chicago Fire 6-2. What a scoring fest in that one. The goals came from Acosta. Mullins got a hat trick. Patrick Niarco in the 51st minute, and De Leon in the 89th. For the Fire, it was De Liu in the 31st, and Kokis in the 47th. So, what a dominant performance by DC United in that match. And Philadelphia won 2-0 over Sporting KC, and RSL won 2-1 over Colorado. If you have any comments, thoughts about this first podcast, any suggestions, you could always drop them in the comments. I would appreciate that very much. So for our last portion of our show, I'll go over how I thought USA played in the Copa America. So, first of all, I thought USA had a pretty strong Copa America. As I said, they finished 4th. They lost to Argentina in the semifinals, and they lost to Colombia in the 3rd place game. So in their first match, they played Colombia, and they lost 2-0. It was dominant performance by Colombia. USA did not play good at all that match. So I guess they put it in their own hands to step it up. And in the next week, they did. They got a win over Costa Rica in the next match. That was a really good performance by USA, I thought. Coming 4 days after their loss to Colombia, they came back and they beat Costa Rica. And in the next match they played Paraguay, and they won that match 1-0. And I just popped up the scores. They beat Costa Rica 4-0 that match. That was a dominating performance. Then they beat Paraguay 1-0. And that was enough to put them into the next stage, which they played Ecuador and won 2-1 over Ecuador. And that put them in the semifinals. It was a very exciting moment for all USA soccer fans. And then they had to play Argentina, and the final in that match wasn't very pretty. It was 4-0. So you figured, they still got a chance for 3rd place. They play Colombia, and they lose 1-0. So, not really disappointing Copa. I would have liked to seen better, especially in the matches against Colombia. But I will take 4th place. Seeing the other countries that got the first 3 spots, very soccer-oriented countries, as you might say. So USA's next match will be September 6th against Trinidad and Tobago, another World Cup qualifying match. Hopefully they'll pick up another 3 points there. And then they won't have another match until October 7th when they play Cuba in Cuba. And then October 11th they will play New Zealand. And now let's check the women's national team schedule. Just think about the women's. They weren't really as popular before they won their World Cup, as you might say. They have a really great team, I thought. Before the World Cup started, they have players you might recognize as Carly Lloyd, Alex Morgan. They had a great goalkeeper, Hope Solo. They have who else is there? Christian Press. She's been playing good recently. Crystal Dunn. Now she did not play in the World Cup. She played in the matches afterwards in the Victory Tour, and she really showed how good she was. She didn't make the World Cup cut, but she did make the cut for the Victory Tour, and I thought she played excellent. So see, for the U.S. women's national team's upcoming schedule, they have a match September 15th against Thailand and September 18th versus the Netherlands. So those should be two good matchups. Should be the same lineups. I don't think there'll be any changes other than the goalkeeper. I thought they had a good Olympics up till, I can't even say good Olympics. It was a good Olympics, but they kind of sort of let down. Like, for example, okay, so their first match in the Olympics, they played New Zealand, and they won 2-0 with goals coming from, I'll tell you in a minute. I knew one was from Carly Lloyd, and the other one was from Alex Morgan. And then they won a 1-0 win over France. And I could tell there, they barely squeezed off a 1-0 win. It went off the post, fell right to the feet of a attacker, which I believe was Carly Lloyd. And she put it in the back of the net late in the match. And that's kind of when you knew you saw it coming. Because the next match, yes, I was right, it was Lloyd. They played Colombia, which should have been an easy win in my thought. But they had already qualified for the next round in first place. Keep that in mind when going into this next thought. They tied 2-2 against Colombia. The goal scorers were Dunn and Pugh in that match. And they went down 1-0 off a free kick that went through the legs of Hope Solo. It bounced right in front of her. She should have had it. It went right through the legs. Mistakes like that happen. It doesn't usually happen with a goalkeeper like Hope Solo, but it did happen that match. And in the 90th minute, the same girl who scored the free kick through Hope Solo's legs got another free kick in the top corner and tied it up 2-2. That didn't matter. USA already had first place on to next round, but it kind of, brought them up for that next match, and it was a loss to Sweden in penalty kicks. So they didn't even get to play in the third place game as they lost in the quarterfinal. It is pretty disappointing, but you can't expect them to win everything. Before the Olympics, they had matches against Costa Rica, South Africa in July. They won 4-0 over Costa Rica and 1-0 over South Africa. And as you know, they are the reigning World Cup champs. They beat Japan 5-2 in 2015 to become the World Cup champs. And like I said, this is the first episode. I'm going to be making mistakes. And next week it will be more organized and there will be less mistakes, I promise. I'm getting used to this new podcasting thing. So yeah. I don't see what else I have to cover. Let me think. I think we really covered everything. We'll go over a little bit of Bundesliga. And I think we might wrap it up from there. So in Bundesliga, match day 1, we saw a 6-0 win from Bayern Munich over Werder. Lewandowski had a hat trick, had a very nice goal in that match. Wolfsburg won 2-0. Let's see what other. I think Dortmund won 2-1 over Mainz 05. I'm pretty sure it's not how you say it, but I don't really follow the Bundesliga. I don't follow the Bundesliga because, now this is my opinion, that there's like 2 super teams in the Bundesliga, and the rest don't really have a chance. Like Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. And it's always Bayern Munich every year that wins it. That's why I don't see any joy in watching it. I feel that way about Ligue 1 with PSG. That every year they win the final, and I don't see any fun in watching that league. Now, before we wrap it up, I completely forgot. Let's talk about Manchester United. They have made some insane signings over the offseason. They have gotten Pogba, which is a huge signing. Pogba's a great player. And they got Zlatan Ibrahimovic. from PSG. So those two players will be playing alongside Rooney and Sterling. So I don't know what to expect out of Manchester United this year. I see them as one of the favorites to win the league. When you have all those stars like that, it's kind of like the Warriors in the NBA. All the signings they got. So, yeah, definitely. Manchester United's really stacked this year. I see them looking good. They're off to a good start this year. Ibrahimovic's off to a good start. He scored some goals already, including a bicycle kick. I think we really covered all the leagues, and we covered U.S. soccer, MLS. I hope you learned something this show. I definitely have. So, yeah, next week we will see more of an organized show and more of a... I'll talk about more of one league than going to league. So you should expect a lot more out of next show. Alright, so thank you for joining me on this show. Please comment in the comment section any of your thoughts, good or bad, anything I need to correct, or anything you would like to see in next week's episode. So, yeah, watch some soccer out there. We don't have the best weather for soccer here. As you know, we had Hurricane Hermine come through. So a lot of soccer matches were canceled around here. And yeah, so watch a lot of soccer this week. Vamos Orlando. And I will see you next week. And yeah, definitely tune in for next week's episode. And tune in September 6th for USA against Trinidad. Support our national team in hopes to go into the World Cup this year. And yep. So that's it. See you next week.